There are many forms of future tenses and other ways to provide a future meaning to a verb phrase, but the most common future forms are will and be going to. Each of these can be used to express future plans or future predictions and can generally be used in a variety of situations. But there are times when one of these terms would be more suitable than the other. So, the question is, what's the difference between will and be going to? Before we answer that, we should note that what we're talking about applies to all variations of these forms, including simple, continuous, or perfect, or even passive. And we're assuming you already know how will and be going to are structured to agree with different subjects, to form negatives, to voice questions as contractions, etc. Alright, now let's consider how these terms are used apart from just being future indicators. We'll start with will. As a noun, will or willpower is a person's desire, determination, or strength of motivation. Similarly, as a verb, will means to assert or intend. Will is a personal word. It's rooted in one's own thoughts and feelings. As an auxiliary verb for future plans, will can be used to voice one's intention or determination, as in, I will be an astronaut when I grow up, or you'll do better next time. Consider this sentence. Ron will resign by the end of the month. This could reflect the speaker's will. Perhaps that person has been confidently urging Ron to resign or scheming to force Ron's hand. Or maybe this reflects the subject's will, the subject being Ron, and the speaker simply knows or assumes Ron's intention. In many cases, it's perfectly fine to use will like this, but using will for future plans is often stronger when the subject is I. In other words, when it reflects the willpower or intention of both the speaker and the subject since they are the same person. Will is a personal word. Now let's look at be going to. As a lexical verb, going conveys progress and activity, as in, I'm going to the market. As a future indicator, it's not all that different. There's generally some sense of movement, though it may not be physical. If I were to say, Bonnie is going to learn French, that probably means some progress has been made toward that future learning. She has likely already considered the option, discussed it with her friends and family, and made the decision to start French class. Or perhaps it's further along than that, and Bonnie has already enrolled in a French class or purchased a French language coursebook. And by the way, we could also use the present continuous tense if all this has been arranged. Or what about Wade, who has purchased an exercise bike and some dumbbells? He might tell you, I'll start an exercise routine this summer, and that would be an okay way to express his intention. But given the action he's already taken to prepare for his new habit, it would be even more fitting to say, I'm going to start an exercise routine this summer. But let's say no progress whatsoever has been made toward a particular action. In a conversation with Wade, he decides to start eating healthier in a spur-of-the-moment decision. He might then say, I'll start my diet tomorrow. In this case, using be going to instead wouldn't exactly be wrong, but it just doesn't fit as well, since going indicates some level of progress or activity. We've explored both will and be going to for future plans. Remember that will is personal and is about intention, while be going to is about progress, whether that's practical or merely psychological. Notice that these two are not opposites. There's plenty of overlap and many situations for which either will or be going to would be appropriate. Let's switch gears and talk about future predictions. Again, be going to works well when there's already some progress made toward the predicted conclusion. For instance, you might say, I'm gonna be sick, if you're already starting to feel nauseous. Or you could say, that tree is going to fall, if the tree is old and leaning heavily to one side, and maybe there's a tornado on the way. In many be going to cases, like this tree example, there is some external evidence that makes it clear to the speaker and others what is likely to happen. On the other end, will is suitable when the prediction reflects the speaker's personal assessment of the situation. It might be optimistic or pessimistic, and it's generally more biased than be going to. If Monique says, there will be flying cars in our lifetime, that's either a personal theory she has or just wishful thinking. We might preface will with verbs like think, hope, or believe, or include adverbs like probably or perhaps. We could use these qualifiers with be going to as well, but most of the time they are better paired with will or won't. Let's try a comparison with a local sports team. At the start of the season, you might hear James say, "The Mad Dogs will win the championship this year." Maybe this is blind confidence, purely based on the fact that James really wants them to win, as if his willpower could make it come true. Or perhaps James has done his research into players and stats and the schedule, and this is his logical conclusion. Either way, this statement is very much from James's subjective point of view. But now suppose it's the end of the season, the team is undefeated, and the opposition has lost their best player. Or maybe it's in the middle of the final game and the Mad Dogs are ahead by several points. Both situations would be an ideal time for Anne to say, "The Mad Dogs are going to win the championship." This exclamation is not Anne's personal opinion. Instead, it's clear to everyone that progress has been made toward the Mad Dogs' success, making their win the most likely outcome. When it comes to predictions, be going to is usually stronger than will because it implies that we're already on a path toward that future action or state. But there's still no guarantee that a be going to verb will in fact come true. Some unforeseen factor may throw the future off its apparent course. Perhaps that old tree will inexplicably remain standing a little while longer. Or the underdog team rallies to reach a last-minute victory over the Mad Dogs. For future events that are set in stone, we would instead use the present simple tense. On the other hand, if the speaker is less certain, they might use may, might, or could to replace will or before be going to. Each of these other future forms are worth exploring, but the most frequently used expressions of the future are will and be going to. Both of these terms can be used for future plans or future predictions. While there are a number of applications that better align with one than the other, it's probably easier to focus on the big picture distinctions between the two, though again, there's plenty of overlap. Will is internally driven to express personal intentions, hopes, or subjective expectations. Be going to is a reflection of progress already made toward a goal or likely outcome.